Welcome to the 100th edition of ClariTea Chat. Thank you for joining us throughout the past 99 episodes, inspiring us with your interactions and questions. Our mission: to demystify enterprise IT management, focusing on four root causes: compounded complexities across industry, process, and fast evolving technology. IT being a nascent management function, just 30 to 40 years old. Asymmetry of talent: 95% talent is on the supply side, and high margin business, a crowded market, aggressive marketing efforts. While the agenda was strong, the starting was accidental. We were trying it out when I went live in a sweaty t-shirt. Then we started next week with first session with Mr. Vijay Sethi. ClariTea Chat brings you live interactive interviews with senior business and IT leaders offering insights into technology and leadership. This is our 100th ClariTea Chat session where 56 guests, including CIOs, CEOs, CHROs, have talked to us live so far. We have also featured 27 Ask Me Anything sessions with me. These open-ended discussions covered a wide range of topics. Technology has played a pivotal role in making these non-stop ClariTea Chat sessions possible. It enabled me to connect with my team and guests worldwide during my travel. At the end of 2022, we went back to our audience and asked for ideas. ClariTea Chat 2.0 emerged with a new logo. It became fortnightly and it became more theme-driven, all coming from your feedback. We celebrated many milestones during this journey. At 25 weeks, we celebrated with Divya Shlokam. She hosted the session with Mr. Sethi joining us again. We celebrated 1 year in June 2022 with 4 of our popular guests diving into taboo topics in IT. In June 2023, we marked our 2-year anniversary with Mr. Vijay Sethi. Today, we are thrilled to celebrate our 100th edition of ClariTea Chat. Stay tuned as we dive into this milestone with a special panel to discuss the 2023 Digital Scorecard. Thank you for being part of our incredible journey.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 100th edition of ClariTea Chat. In today's special edition, we have some of our most popular past guests. Please welcome Mr. Vijay Sethi, our first guest.
Hi. Congratulations, Jagdish. Congratulations.
Thank you, Vijay sir. We have another Vijay. This is Vijay Ramachandran, our third guest. Hi, Vijay.
Hi, Jagdish. Congrats once again.
Thanks, Vijay. We have Mr. Arun Gupta, our 7th guest. Hi, Arun. Arun, you may be on mute. Yeah. And we have Mr. Rajiv Jorapur, our 40th guest.
Hello, and congratulations.
And we have Mr. Prabir Jha, who was our 13th guest. And probably Prabir is the only non-IT guy in the panel providing an external perspective.
This is a brilliant century, Jagdish. Well done. Well played.
Thank you, Prabir, and thank you everyone for joining me in today's 100th ClariTea Chat milestone session. It's actually nostalgic to host you again, all of you again, and especially Vijay, who has been like on every of my milestone sessions, he has been there. Thank you, Vijay sir, and he was my first guest as well. But thank you everyone. I think great for joining us here. So we'll open the panel discussion with a quick overview of the 2023 Digital Scorecard by Vijay Ramachandran. And post that, we will pick up the paradoxes revealed by the report. And we will have a thought-provoking discussion on a few paradoxes. One is CIO perspectives, how CIOs look at themselves versus other CXOs look at themselves. Other CXOs look at them. On security, the threat landscape is widening, but security investments are not. And these are things that you will see in Vijay's scorecard. Watch out for those. In the face of digital disruption, 75% of the CXOs don't think their organizations have the right leadership to adopt digital. And the debate on cloud, which is always lively. And of course, your questions, which you may have for our August panel. At the end of it, our senior panelists would have left you with diverse, richer, and uncanny viewpoints to assess your own organization's leaders and initiatives. Now, before I give mic to Vijay, I want to acknowledge our audience. We have CXOs, founders, IT managers, and seasoned technology leaders in our audience. We all know that technology is necessary, but not sufficient to drive business performance. And ClariTea Chat builds that bridge by bringing you experiences of our guests in managing technology and its complexities. It has been a lot of co-creation, connecting deeper and learning from each other with my guests, but we have been cheered by all our audience, engaging with us session after session. So all of you listening to us live or recorded, thank you for your encouragement and engagement from all over the world. We wouldn't have reached 100 without you. So I can see the comments and kudos flowing in. Thank you all so much. But please, if you haven't done, please do send us your names and locations you're joining from. And more importantly, your questions for our guests. As you keep hearing Vijay's presentation. Thank you all. And I hand over the stage to Vijay for a quick 5-minute walkthrough of the report. Over to you, Vijay.
Thanks so much. Is this now visible to everybody?
Yes, Vijay, we can see you.
Perfect. All right. So this is a tiny subset of the research that I end up doing every year with organizations. It started out 8 years back, just trying to figure out how real is digital getting for organizations? What does this really mean for them? What's getting in the way? What isn't? Questions like, is the CDO role really emerged, or is it now extinct? Things like that, right? So let's start with something that's very simple. So the top 3 priorities seem to be around a lot of beefing up of security. That could be either adding additional layers. It could be about consolidating security on a single platform. That's also gathering a lot of pace these days. It's definitely about a lot of automation, both from an RPA and intelligent automation perspective, sometimes even digital twins for employees, digital assistants, and of course, enhancing customer experience. We come to the first of our paradoxes. So this started to increase, this number started to increase. I've seen it increase twice like this. One was, of course, back in the day when the first slowdown hit between 0809, and organizations at that time for the first time started asking whether the CIO should only be doing IT or other things as well. And of course, in the aftermath of the pandemic, a lot of this actually happened. The CIO role actually elevated. The CIOs became extremely critical to what their organizations were doing. The 71% doesn't worry me, actually. It's the other one. When we look at what other CXOs think of this, I think this gap, I think that we need to definitely discuss. Why is this gap there? Yeah, and I'm sure the panel today, we have veteran CIOs. We also have someone who has been in the HR function. It would be interesting to hear their thoughts on why they think this is so and what can be done to mitigate this. Yeah, this is not what worries me, because about 8 years back, about 13.5% of organizations were telling me this. I think the role is kind of defunct. In many organizations, CIOs get elevated to this, but outside of banks and maybe FMCG organizations, I'm not really seeing this emerge at all. It's been declining over the years. Yeah, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, about a third of organizations tell me that yes, there are impacts from digital business models that their rivals are using, that they see in their competitive landscape. The rest don't see this happening. This is the one thing that Jagdish keeps pointing to. Now, 30 years odd back, this number that I had studied back then was about 86, 87%. Now, 30 years later, it has dwindled by just 5 points, then something is seriously not okay within organizations. This is not to say that the technology investments did not pan out, that the go-lives were not successful, that they were failures. No, absolutely not. It's a question of how much absolute value for the business was generated through that technology go-live, right? So there is this, which is a bit of a worry. Now, the other thing is, when I've been asking, one of the things, like I said, this research was supposed to figure out was what's really happening with transformation digitally. And what I've seen is that the digital bit happens, the transformation doesn't. So So when I start to delve and ask CXOs, what do you think is the challenge? I think a lot of fingers get pointed towards the leadership. And that is not just the rest of the managing committee. This is primarily the finger is being pointed at the CEO or the CMD, that a lot of them essentially want the status quo to persist. I have spent some time talking to CEOs also as to why this is so. And I think a part of the reason, is that a lot of their compensation happens via stock options, and everyone wants to keep that share price as high as possible to keep profitability levels high. And therefore, that may sometimes work against trying innovative new things that might, for instance, go completely haywire or go kaput or achieve nothing. I think it does get in the way of being a little more innovative or spending more on R&D or trying new initiatives. Yeah. Now, this number's only been going up every single year. That people believe that their organizations need to juice the data much better in order to be really successful. But 3/4 of organizations tell me that a lot of the data, in fact, half of it literally, is dark. It's either not being captured properly or it remains between the ears or behind the eyes of the people who are there, maybe the field force, or it is not in a form that can be utilized or used digitally, right? So that is a challenge. This is another set of paradoxes, the paradoxes that Jagdish was pointing out. And finally, this number, by the way, again has been climbing. 5 years back, it was in the early 70s, right? So clearly, pandemic, a lot of the collab platforms that came into play at that point, the fact that a lot more digital technologies exist now, everyone realizes this is fairly standard. There's nothing interesting about this figure by itself. But it's this, that if over 90% think that there is a bigger challenge now, that the usage of these technologies is leading to a greater threat landscape, then I should have seen similar movements in security spend as well. And I don't see that. In marquee organizations, in the ones that are, dominating their competitive landscape, you do see this. But for the large mass of organizations, we're clearly not seeing. There's a 40-point plus difference, right? So this is another of those paradoxes. And I'm just trying to be, I'm really curious as to what is going on here, right? Now, when it comes to the cloud, yes, the pandemic has led to momentum. Yes, there is a lot more happening there. But my numbers tell me that the other thing that has been rising every single year is the cost of the cloud. Because if your workforce is not seasonal or cyclical, or it does not rise and drop with quarters, and it is primarily trending upwards, and the number of workloads you're trying to move to the cloud are also trying to trend upwards, then the cost is definitely trending upwards. It is definitely one of the questions I have for CIOs and CTOs is, are you calculating the cost of cloud as a function of the cost of your revenue or your cost of your operations? And are you seeing a rising trend there? Yeah. This is something that about 8 years back, about 6% of firms were actually reverse migrating. Most of these are firms that have had infrastructure plays, but in some cases, this has also been for software as a service. I have seen it come back to on-prem, but this number is rising. It's also fairly, from what my colleagues in the US have told me, these numbers are actually very accurate even for the US as well. Overall, even today in the Indian landscape, I'm seeing that somewhere between 80 to 83% of the workloads are still on-prem. They have not moved to the cloud. A lot of transactional systems are still staying in. Some things have definitely moved out, but a large mass are still staying in. A large number of organizations also tells me, this is like 68%, tell me that when they look at app modernization, while they are being cloud ready, they are still planning to modernize those apps within their data centers, right? So the cloud is strong, there is a momentum, but there's also this reality about it. Yeah. Finally, and this, by the way, is worse in the case of CIOs. I just spent time with a lot of CISOs a couple of weeks back, and the stress levels that they were telling me about are insane. Maybe we want to have, if we have the time, a discussion why CISOs feel more stressed than even CIOs. Maybe it's part of the threat landscape we are seeing because it's so dynamic. There is no rest for anyone, wicked or otherwise. But that's primarily what I wanted to cover. And Jagdish, I think you've kind of lost your bet. I've done it in 5 minutes.
I lost my bet. You you nailed it, Vijay. But I met my objective of keeping Vijay on time. So for the benefit of all my audience, I put a wager that Vijay will not be able to finish it in 10 minutes, even though I said 5 minutes. But I lost it. Yeah, you were
That was a
1 minute.
clever move by you, huh?
Oh no, thanks Vijay for that quick overview of the report. So now let's move to the discussion. Now that the context has been set, so let's pick up the first paradox. Okay, so 71% of the CIOs believe their role has elevated due to the competitive landscape, but only 52% of other CXOs believe this to be so. Um, there are two factors here. One may be that this can be true for any other CXO, but also I want to correlate it with the difference in perception on technology programs itself. That 100% of the technology programs are successful, but only 18% succeed on the business value perception of the CXOs. So let's quickly go around on this in terms of what our panelists think about it. So Rajiv, let me start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, frankly, to me it is not very surprising, and I will elaborate why I'm saying so. So the phenomena we are talking about here is essentially perception and I believe phenomena normally obey certain underlying rules of operation. One of the natural laws of perception is when the subject is close to the object appears larger. So if the subject here is the ego disguised as a self, and the object is the role or the influence, then naturally it will appear larger. And if your feeling is a threat, then you will appear smaller than, because then you will feel stress. So, but having said that, one of the really fascinating things for me over the past 6-7 years is trying to understand where these different perceptions stem from. How do they form? What are the thinking patterns? And try to integrate them into one whole. The analogy would be like 7 blind people looking at an elephant, for example. Right. So when you look at the whole, then you expand everyone's understanding of the phenomena, and therefore everyone win-win. That's a win-win situation. That's one take. The second take is coming to what you said about go live, technical go live, and business value realization. So there, I think, so one view could be a horse and a cart. The horse could be the technology, and therefore it has to lead. You have to have the means, and you have to practice on the means before you reach the end. So that's one analogy which can sort of explain it. But the other more interesting, rather more relevant, would be think of it like something we are trying to learn a new skill, for example, right? A new way of doing things. Now, if I take the analogy of a music, let's say tabla, I want to learn tabla. We may do all background work, look at which are the schools, who are the teachers, do all that stuff, get a tabla in, go to the school on the day one, and when I come back, let's say my wife asks me, "So are you now a master?" Sorry, I've just started. Right?
Yeah.
Go live to me is just the beginning of the end of the preparation stage, I would say, and beginning of the value realization stage. The time it would take to mature would be situational. It would depend on a lot of factors. But
Yeah.
as
So Rajiv,
CIOs or technology, just a sec, just complete. I think our responsibility is to bring this understanding to all stakeholders.
no,
So,
absolutely. Actually, you were right at the point where I wanted Arun to take over and bring out a very contradictory viewpoint. So Arun, tell me what is your take on it? It's very interesting, by the way.
So, Jagdish, I think the starting point is in the question itself. A technology program versus a business program. If you're running a technology program, probably the CIO will always declare to be successful if it meets a certain set of criteria, which is on time, on budget, goes live. Having said that, if it's a business project, then there's a joint ownership between the business and the technology folks. And having said that, if you haven't baselined from where you got started, what are you measuring at the end? Measurement cannot be done just for the sake of measurement. You need to know what exactly you want to measure. Second, go live is just a milestone. Value starts coming over a period of time. I think it's important to also define in what time frame will you be able to achieve your objective. And this is where a lot of organizations fail to, one, set the baseline clearly, second, define a timeline in which they are going to do the measurement. And the third point that I would want to mention here, for any project, for an organization which impacts the business, which impacts the customers, there has to be a clear ownership, not just from the tech IT side, but also from the business side. If I'm going to be creating a solution for my customer success head or my sales head or my marketing heads have to be part of that initiative, own up the process, and ensure that they are also able to measure as we go along, because it is not necessary from where you got started with a clear definition of what you want is exactly what the customer adapt. You have to do course corrections regularly, frequently, and that is how you end up deriving value. So, coming back to the perception part of it, I think the perceptions, everyone believes I'm great. It's only when you reflect yourself in the mirror, you'll probably see, yeah, maybe there are a few warts and moles, but that would be true for anyone whatsoever, in personal life as well as professional.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So Arun, I think brought in a very important point about are you really baselining success? Are you really are you clear? Are you clear in terms of data about what success means? Because you're right, the problem may be that not just the CIOs but even the CXOs are also looking at these programs from a technical rollout point of view and not really centered on deriving the benefits or even quantifying the benefits. So Vijay said his let me come back to you now. Your quick view on this.
So I think I'll take from where Rajiv and Arun left. So one is our own view. All of us have done appraisals in our life for tons of people. Every time the self-appraisal is way beyond whatever the manager appraises. Or even if you do a 360-degree appraisal, always the appraisal value is much lower than what the person would have appraised. So which basically means that there are a lot of times when we actually overlook the point that Rajiv also rightly said, a lot of times we overlook the negatives in ourselves and tend to highlight a lot of positives. So where we have a kind of a higher expectations of ourselves and we think that we are already great. And that's, to me, that's coming out very clearly in Vijay's survey. The second point is where you said 52% of the other CXOs believe. The reality is, if you ask from a CIO perspective for the other CXOs, the answer could be again similar. The CIOs would think the same for the other CXOs also, that they are not doing that much. But now coming to the second point where you said that technical success is 100%, but the business value is 18%. Now, I have a fundamental disconnect over there from if with Vijay Ramachandran, I think I would have done tons of panels on the role of CIO. Is CIO a technical guy? Is he head of IT and is his job only to ensure technical success? Why is he even saying that my project is technical success? My project is not being implemented to upgrade a technology from A to B or to automate a process, but I'm a CXO, I am a business leader. And most of the projects do not actually start with the baseline, as Arun rightly said. I'm improving my efficiency by 4%. What do I mean? When I know what my current efficiency levels are, then I'll put some random numbers over there and say that I have improved the efficiency. So I think the key thing over here we need to ensure is we first measure the baseline. And CXOs behave, the CIOs behave like CXOs. The moment you are a C in front of your title, then you are not really an IT manager. You are a business leader who has to ensure value, and your job is not just to ensure technical success. That is just one milestone in the entire journey.
Absolutely. So on that note, now I come to Prabir, and Prabir, like, if you're talking of the appraisal problem, Prabir has seen it on steroids, the entire organization working, and he can also provide a perspective on, like, these CXO perspectives, the inter CXO perspective, not just CIO. But then, Prabir, once you're on, I am going to bring in one of the comments of a CIO. Okay, and I want you to weave that
Sure.
into your answer. That will
Sure.
be the surprise element for you.
No, absolutely. So I'm glad that Vijay Sethi, ended on the note that I was, wanting to respond to that question. First, I don't think CIOs need to be whipping themselves up into a frenzy. It's a split house. 50% roughly, believe that they are adding value. 50%, and that I 100% agree would apply to any other C-suite executive. So I liked his perspectives. I want to kind of reaffirm that. Having said that, there are a couple of things that CIOs need to think. One, the point that has been made, they are not leaders of only technology. They are leaders of influence. And I have seen many CIOs who are very good with the bread and butter part of their job. But are they masters of influence? I don't know. Maybe that's not been an area they have historically been coached in or exposed to. And therefore, and I speak to a set of CIOs here, not everyone is therefore adept as an accomplished 360-degree leader. And I think the organization is to be blamed as much as individuals themselves. They have not morphed from being a tech expert to being a true leader. So that comes into play in the way you are able to evangelize your agenda, the way you are able to get people to own the excitement. Very much like HR was some years ago. It was the same debate. The other point I want to also bring out, Jagdish, is not in every leadership team. They are part of the leadership team, but are they part of the management, the executive team? Not. It's still work in progress. Like the GC in some companies is part of the management team. It is not. CIO is often reporting under the CFO, right? So there is an HR explanation about span of control and how many people you don't want to make it a crowd, but at the end of the day, it's the chicken and the egg story. Is lack of the right positioning of the CIO also leading to a coloring of the agenda not being important and rubbing off on the role? Had they been there, would they have had a better perspective? Would they have participated in more business or more complete conversations? And would that have led to a better opportunity of influencing, better opportunity of buying in? So I think it's a journey. It's a journey, and of course the last, which I think Vijay will have a better sense of knowing, it's finally the individual. I mean, I remember my days in Tata Motors. You were not part of our executive team, but you had the ability to walk into our offices and share your point of view, not only on the IT agenda, but we discussed many other things. So the person's specificity, I don't know, the target group, the target companies, I don't have an idea, and I don't know all these CIOs, but I think there's also a personal dimension to that, and the CIO community and the CIO in particular has to actually enhance his ability to influence and energize and evangelize. I think that is where I think they are typically missing the plot. It's not about hard work or thinking right and doing the right things.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a point. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which is how. I mean, we are hard workers, but how many of us can influence, and how many of us can really, So, I mean, in ClariTea Chat, we talk about the multidimensional complexity of IT. How many of us are even able to explain that multidimensional complexity to our own folks? Like, for example, most of the time, I had to tell people that, where is your process? Unless you define your process, I will not bring in technology. Right? And people have, it's like, I can set up a new process by just putting in a new technology. But by the way, there's just one more, point which I brought in from Vinod Ramakrishnan. He's a CIO of Indus Towers. So he says that I think part of the problem is the unwillingness of business stakeholders to attribute the win to the IT intervention. It becomes a discussion about being only a tool and claiming that multiple factors are actually key. So, Prabir, to be frank, to be honest, I have seen this tendency. I always used to measure, our performance based on the business KPIs moving. But then when we got into those business discussions, the entire credit used to be taken by the business guys.
So very quickly, Jagdish, very quickly, and I see Vijay's hand up. See, it happens in many companies, and at the end of the day, let's be honest. I mention this to when I do a CHR or roundtable. I tell them, at the end of the day, you can cry till the cows come home. How does it change reality? The fact of the matter is, if you don't blow your own trumpet, others will use it as a spittoon, and that is part of self-belief as leaders. Your ability to articulate, your ability to put your arms around people, your ability to share credit. It's okay. No one, I mean, I always complain that, which organization gave me the public award? No one, because my job was to applaud everyone but myself. Now that's a professional hazard. So I think no one gives anything. Only the guys who will take the credit are the sales guy or the ops guys, because it's here and now. It's very visible. But part of leadership is not about credit taking. My experience, having led HR of some large companies, is the more you take that pressure about, oh, CIO ko credit nahi diya, IT ko nahi diya, you've lost the plot. Ultimately the agenda, and I say this as a consumer of the CIO's support, right? I mean, they helped me succeed. And I, for one, would always be grateful, and I would always say that they made a difference to me and my work and the experience of people. So ultimately, part petty jealousy, part petty, abrogation of, credit away from rightful people. I wouldn't be too worried. Just stay focused, but sell yourselves a lot better. I think the CIO world is still a little rat in the corner. No one has the time to recognize the rat in the corner. Come out, behave like management of the organization, take interest in things, and you will find a lot of things change.
Yeah, Vijay, sorry. Please.
One
please.
point, just to take what Prabir was talking about, just taking that forward, and also to the point that Vinod was making, right? I have seen in organizations where the gears really mesh, that absolute magic happens. Two individuals are very critical, and one paradigm is very critical. The two individuals are the CEO/CMD and what they want out of the IT department. What she or he wants. The second individual is the CIO and what she or he wants out of life and work. That's very critical. And the third is the organizational mindset or culture within the organization. How open is it to change? How closely do departments work together? After all, the business of the IT department is also the business of the organization. It isn't IT, right? So when these three factors come into play, then magic happens. But if even one of these factors is a little out of whack, that's when you start seeing this. And what these numbers tell me is that in a large number of organizations, something is out of synergy, right? That's why you're seeing numbers of this.
No,
but it's not unique to CIOs. That's the point. It is applicable to many areas, but you've summarized it very well.
Yeah. So just my little perspective on this credit game. I think it is a two-way thing. So what we used to do was, what I started, I told my team that whenever we are talking of a business of an IT initiative success, we must put the business sponsor's photo on the slide. And reverse, what we also did was, when we had our annual conference outdo, we actually went out to all the business leaders and we shot their videos asking them how IT has added value to them. I think the point gets made. It's a both ways, yeah. Okay,
so it's like it's like imagining either you are Chanakya and you are now looking for king. So you are either a kingmaker, and therefore you say your role is creating many kings.
Absolutely. Great point there, Rajiv. So before we move to the next one, here is a rapid fire to my guests, okay, all of you. The survey reveals that only 31% of the CXOs believe their businesses are being disrupted by digital business models. This in itself, without a counterpoint, becomes a paradox for me. So please please tell your view. Do you agree? Why or why not? Starting with Rajiv.
Oh. So I'll say it may or may not. It's a very situational topic, and therefore whether it's disrupting or not will depend on a lot of things. Let's say digital, if it's digitally born, then they don't know of any other way but that. So for them, it's not disruption; it's a normal way of doing things.
Okay.
If it's a
Okay.
brick and mortar company, it's their choice on how they would like to use the capabilities that these bring in their larger strategy and what outcomes they seek.
Okay. Arun.
I think it's industry specific. It can't be generally applied to all industries or all kinds of organizations. Any
Okay.
B2B organization probably would not necessarily be so worried. A B2C organization should definitely be worried.
Okay. Yeah, Vijay. Sethi.
My view will be quite contradictory to this. So whether you take digital disrupting or a digital business model, which are two different things, disrupting an organization, the number of organizations globally across geographies, across industries is way beyond 31%. If 31% of CIOs feel that they are getting disrupted, I don't think they are truly aware of what kind of disruptions are happening in industry globally. So my number would be closer to 100% rather than closer to 30%.
So Vijay is saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Of course, and part of when is already there for way beyond 31.
Absolutely. So
I don't know how Vijay feels. Maybe we should check Vijay's views also.
Yeah, Vijay.
You're on mute.
Vijay, you're on mute.
Yeah. So one of the things, very interestingly, typically we get told that, only 12% of organizations in the Fortune 500 have continued from when it started 70 years back and so on and so forth. But, there is a couple of other stats that are very interesting. Less than 10%. In fact, it's about 8% of Fortune 500 companies were born after 1990, right? The average age of a Fortune 500 company is actually 90 years, right? Which also tells you that even brick and mortar companies, if they have the wherewithal, if they have the visionary leadership, if they have the ability to adapt or adopt technologies that are digitally disruptive, then they have a runway, they have a future, they can continue to be relevant. I'll give you another example from an industry that both Rajiv and Vijay have been part of. You remember when 100cc motorcycles got introduced in India? It was in 84. Almost all those companies still exist. They may have changed the names of the bikes. It is no longer in Suzuki, it became TVS Motors. It isn't Kawasaki Bajaj, but it's Bajaj Auto. But those companies have continued. Their products have continued. They have continued to find success by adapting, innovating, and all of that. So my challenge is that in all of this digital disruption, let us not less look to digital native companies for that innovation. Some of the best innovation happens in companies that are migrants into digital, which are brick and mortar companies, but have used that understanding of the market and the customer to actually push it forward.
Absolutely. That's why I put the number closer to 100% because all those guys are also getting disrupted internally. So it's not that they are getting out of business.
Maybe Prabir, your quick point of view.
So very, very quickly, to all the enlightened views, see, it all depends on how do you define disruption. See, disruption itself is not binary. It's a long continuum. So I personally don't think I agree with that 31% thing. I'm surprised, right? Disruption is that tomorrow morning will be a very different, all green morning. It doesn't happen like that. But I personally think that a lot of businesses have been disrupted and will continue to be disrupted. Having been a civil servant, I can tell you the delivery model of the government agencies has changed. The way we serve people has changed. I mean, in my own area of HR, the way we kind of deal, recruit, hire, fire. I mean, so I think it's been a phenomenal shift. Now the question is, what is disruption, and where is that industry and that company or that leadership in its understanding of disruption? Where is it on the continuum? If it's further down, then it's still not disruptive. But when you look back, disruption always looks dramatic when you look back, right? That's the purpose of disruption. My God, were we like this? But when you're in the flow, you don't realize that things are getting changed in this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my own point of view on this, guys, is that I think it was around 2006 or seven. I was in a class with which was taken by CK Prahlad, and it was one of the TMTC classes where I was nominated. And he asked a very simple question. He said, if you are in a company, you have kids, you have teenage kids, these guys will become consumers in another 10 years. Okay. Will they buy from you? Will your processes be able to serve them? And I think that's the question. The disruption has to be looked at from customers' point of view, from employees' point of view. The new generation that's coming in, are you ready for them? And I think and that's where it becomes a binary answer. Yes or no, right? And I think that's my point of view. Okay. So let me go back to okay. So guys, thank you for all the questions and all the kudos which is flowing in your comments. I'm actually running behind time. I did pick up Vinod's comment, but I'll figure out a way to get all these questions answered. Maybe another separate panel it will take to answer all the questions. But let me push ahead on the agenda that we promised in the announcement. So let me pick up the next one. Okay, so this is the paradox where 73% of the CXOs believe their organizations do not have the right leadership to adopt digitally. This is a paradox where leaders are saying that we must do it, but my peer leaders are not ready. Let me bring these questions to our CHROs here. So, Prabir, you've been in the thick of digital transformation efforts as a sponsor and a steering committee member. What is your take on this one?
This is classic leadership hypocrisy. That's it. At the end of the day, if things don't change, it's a reflection on each leader, right? It is not a reflection on just the head of IT or the CIO or whatever. But having said that, I think most of these issues don't succeed as does any other transformation agenda. For example, the anxiety it unleashes, right? How well do leaders, how well does an organization contain it, respond to it? I mean, these are very human responses. What happens to my job? What happens? I need to learn new skills at 50. Some of them are imaginary, some of them are exaggerated, but I don't think it's the job of IT alone to answer these questions. As a leader, are you actually putting tea to the fire, or are you actually helping assuage? So that's one. Information democracy. Part of the reasons that they don't work is that leaders have loved this. I speak from personal observation of many companies. Uh, they love to run their silos. What true IT enablement, true digital projects do is it makes information almost available to everyone and anyone, and not everyone likes it because it throws a lot of dirt certainly out in the middle, and that is one reason why they also somewhere start sabotaging, some in a very obvious way and some in a very fine way. Uh, Third is, I don't think people understand what's in it for me. I mean, Arun was in Cipla, so I'll say that within 6 months of my joining, I downsized HR by 40%. And I leveraged technology big time. 6 months. I mean, you don't need 6 years for that. 6 months dramatically changed the business, the processes. We outsourced a lot of stuff. Now, the fact is, a lot of people we had to let go because if I had not let them go, someone else would have let them go 5 years later because it's the writing is on the wall. But what's in it for those who are there? How does it make their life more comfortable? How does it allow them space for more so-called strategic work, which is what everyone wants to do? Now, it's a story that has to be told. And finally, I think the most important thing, and leaders are to be blamed, do they actually handhold any of these transformation projects as effectively as they? So I don't think leaders have a right to blame. It's your job to ensure that every such project succeeds. And you cannot leave it to an IT function or some other department to take care of that. It's your job. It's your day job.
Sure. No, that's a great point, Prabir. What's in it for me? Are you personally leveraging this the technology, or are you just like letting it go slow burner?
Role
Great
model.
point. Yeah, absolutely. So Vijay Sethi sir, I think you are a CIO as well as a CHRO, and so you have a sort of unique viewpoint there. So what's your personal experience with this,
So,
and what needs to be done?
okay, so when in 90s people implemented ERP, everyone said change management is very important. Okay, today everyone says digital transformation is 10% technology, 90% people. The reality is we need to focus on people. It's not just the role of CIO. Of course, CIO has to be a change leader, manager himself, but it is the C part of it, the CXO part of each CXO. And to me, each leader is also an HR leader in himself or herself. You can't say only the CHRO is the HR leader or anyone else. So the organization has to really play a huge role in that change management things and ensure that people want to be digitally savvy. They have to ensure the CIO, CHRO, others can play the role in whatever they can play. But in today's context, each leader has to take that responsibility that he himself or she herself and their teams are digitally savvy. And that's where the companies would. Otherwise, the CXO himself or herself will actually fall off. So that's
Absolutely.
how I see. So they have to play a huge role themselves.
So what you're saying is that every leader has to be a digital leader. They have to rise
Absolutely.
up. To, yeah,
Absolutely, and you can't just keep it on either HR कि मेरे को 6 ट्रेनिंग देंगे तभी करूंगा या IT वाले आके सिखाएंगे only I'll do that. No, it's your responsibility. Please do that. And if you need any
absolutely.
support, please go to IT or HR or whomsoever you want to go.
So Vijay Ramachandran, you have had a ringside view of it for a long time, with these surveys, and you have some strong opinions on this. What are those?
Sure. One of the things, Jagdish, is that a few years back, I used to get called to a lot of organizations to talk to them about digital transformation, what is required, and things like that. Do we require a CDO, or should the CIO be running it, or maybe someone else like a CMO? And one of the things that I would keep bringing back to them was whoever you hold responsible for driving this transformation needs to have a mandate to change. And if that person, if you appoint even a CDO, but that person does not have that mandate right from the top, then it was better that the CEO or the CMD run that because they have a mandate for that. They are supposed to be driving the organization for the future, right? So I think that's also a challenge that if you give somebody responsibility, then you ought to also empower them with that driving that level of change across departments because transforming digitally, it's like e-governance. E-governance in the Indian context is not nested under the Ministry of Electronics or IT. It has right from the beginning been nested under the Department of Administrative Reforms and Personnel because it's all about changing the way you work, right? So
Absolutely.
digital transformation also is about transforming the organization and preparing it for today and the future, right? Therefore, whoever is driving these, it could be a CIO, a CDO, or whoever, has to have that mandate. If
Absolutely.
organizations can empower their people to go in that direction, whoever it is, then it works. Then that magic happens. Otherwise, nahi hota hai, right? I
So
think Rajiv was very
yeah, Rajiv, go ahead.
Yeah, so my personal experience in this space has been it's not due to lack of intent. Okay, so everybody wants to change, everybody wants to do the benefit. The I think the core issue is we don't know how to change. And it hits deep because in the digital space, especially, there are these three forces which we are not really trained to, let's say, manage or handle. So one is the speed at which information flows. In a digital world, I launch a product today, next 5 or next day, suddenly in the market somewhere I get a feedback saying it's not doing well or it's not doing well. And the mind is not really geared to respond to this speed of information which is coming in from all quarters. And what tends then to happen is a bullwhip effect. We tend to overact. It's a classic signal processing where we have these. So that's one area where I think, as individuals, we don't know how to handle speed of information flow. The second is digital brings in, as Praveer was saying, transparency. We don't know how to handle transparency beyond a point. when it hits ourselves. We are not, while we would like to do it, but we don't know how to handle it. So it hits the emotional quotient of the person, it hits deep inner values, and therefore I think that's where the challenge is emanating. So that's the second pillar of transparency. The third, that digital warrants and mandates is a level of collaboration and cooperative working which has never been experienced before. I mean, it's like and we had this classic example that in one of the plants, in one room, somebody inserted a machine which disrupted the entire corporate network across all locations. Now one really doesn't know how to handle these. So I believe at the core of it, when we are talking of digital disruptions and how to make it successful, I believe one of the key tasks as leaders is to understand how we ourselves train our own selves to handle these three forces, and therefore equip our team members and the larger ecosystem.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So great discussion. I think mandate is very important. Just my quick point of view, when I remember we were trying to do something for manufacturing dashboards and all, and then we figured out that all 7 plants had different processes. I couldn't do a dashboard. And so when I went to one of the XComs, Prabir, I actually said, guys, who's in charge of processes here? Who's the one who's aligning and let's say streamlining the process, or at least making them uniform across? And everyone was looking at each other, and I just raised my hand. I said, guys, are you okay if I take that mandate? Okay, and and they said, yeah, if you can, why not? Nobody has even asked that question before. And then we basically used that to basically say that, hey, if you're counting inventory this way here, let's come together and figure out what is the agreed way between the two of you. And there were tons of those kind of those governance initiatives that had to be done. But great discussion, guys. I think we are we are just at the we just 10 minutes left, and I don't want to let go of the cloud debate, okay, which is a very interesting one. But before that, Vijay, on that paradox of 93% organizations feel that the threat landscape has widened, but 56% have increased security spending. There's a very, very strong viewpoint which I want to bring in before we go to the cloud debate, and I welcome Arun to share that the counterpoint.
So I would say that a lot of organizations invested a lot during the COVID times because the threat landscape had suddenly changed from just being in one location to becoming thousands of locations for many organizations. Second, if you look at tech evolution, including security tech evolution, capabilities of almost every tool has been going up. The prices have been coming down. To look at the same dollar value, you can get a lot more today. Having said that, I don't think correlation can be direct because every organization looks at threat differently. Every organization defines an acceptable threat level or acceptable risk, as they call it, and then goes ahead and makes investments. Reality also is a lot of organizations don't necessarily discover that they have been compromised until much later. So I think somewhere the balance needs to be drawn out. I don't agree with the number, but I guess reality is we need to be on our toes all the time.
Yeah. And I think there was another viewpoint there, Vijay. Sorry, yeah, Rajiv, go ahead. You also had a point.
Yeah, so my take would be so a lot of companies are investing a lot on digitalizing and a lot of initiative on digital. So it's quite possible that the percentage of spend in security versus the increase in investment that has been done in other areas, as a percentage, it may appear small, but it's like a raw material price increasing by 10% doesn't mean it will increase by 10%, right?
Yep.
So they are non-linear relationships, and therefore I don't see any contradiction there, but maybe Vijay has more insights into these numbers.
Yeah. No, but that was a practitioner's viewpoint coming here, Vijay, which is that you can do much more with with the same amount of dollars. There was another point of view that post COVID there was a spurt in security spending, which seems to be leveling off now, and of course with the increased capabilities, you may be able to do more with less. So so far, what a great discussion. I mean, the only guys I'm feeling a little, you can say, embarrassed about are our audience. I think they are sending a lot of messages there. I can see all your comments, but I'm not able to bring in a lot of questions here, guys. Just because, we have a great discussion on a great agenda, and I hope you're all loving it. I am, frankly. So it's time to go into the rapid fire mode. We have 6 more minutes left. Prabir, you have a hard stop, so you can get accidentally disconnected at 6. You have the liberty to do so. But yeah, so guys, let's keep it like really, really rapid fire. Okay, so 1 minute, and I'm going to raise my hand if anybody goes beyond 1 minute. Okay, so Rajiv, coming back to you, in your experience, does on-prem commercially beat public cloud when it comes to infrastructure? Why or why not?
It's like comparing apples to oranges.
Okay.
So the purpose of moving to cloud, if it was pure cost arbitrage, I would say that may not have been a good decision. But if it was for security, variability, or ability to manage varying loads, then I would not agree with this statement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Many a times it is a question of building a capability, doing quick experiments, being able to flex your muscles, and once that
Yeah.
something gets proven, you then look at where do I really want to go to. Arun, is it even possible to transition away from SaaS or PaaS solutions? Why and why not?
Oh, it is very much possible, except it comes with a lot of pain. And you have to be ready to accept that pain. But really, if you are going to migrate any SaaS or PaaS solution which is being used by your customers, be aware you will be disrupting their experience dramatically. The rest of it, which is internal to the organization, very frankly doesn't matter.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what makes all these as a service, all the cloud solutions, like Hotel California, is just the pain and the cost of migrating out of it, and the fact that a lot of that stuff, you don't know how to rebuild it,
Yeah,
or
but
you
you
have
have
other business
vendors who are
priorities.
pushing you to go to their own clouds, and
Oh
a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
us don't have a choice.
Absolutely,
So you
absolutely.
grin and bear it.
Yeah, today the technology companies are pushing you really, really hard to go to the cloud. So anyway, let me not intervene there. Vijay said, which three
Yeah.
factors have prevented the emergence of a really genuine hybrid cloud model?
Yeah, actually, genuine hybrid cloud market is not there. To me, the three factors would be number one, competence. Competence both within the IT teams and at the provider end. The second would be the complexity. The reality is we have made our own internal IT so complex that actually the hybrid becomes very difficult. And the third one is cost. So three C's: complexity, competence, and cost.
Absolutely, and I would really overrate the competence part of it. I don't think we have genuinely the guys.
That's number one for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Vijay Ramachandran, would you advise consolidating security on a single platform or provider? Why or why not?
So if the organization has great visibility into its vulnerabilities and where they are, then yes. Otherwise, not. Most organizations actually can't see where they are most vulnerable. Therefore, the typical response is to wrap your information and human assets with multiple layers of multiple technologies and tools from multiple providers, right? That is, and in my opinion, that actually increases the vulnerability of the organization because you don't know where the ball is going to drop. But if you have the depth of visibility into where you are most vulnerable, then consolidating security will bring in more efficiency, it will cut costs, it will improve the security posture of the organization, and finally, it will reduce the migraines that the security team has. because it makes it easier to manageable. Otherwise, it's a manageability nightmare out there. Yeah. So if you have visibility, then it's a great way to go. Otherwise, maybe not.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's a great viewpoint, Vijay. It's contextual end of the day. It depends on what your context and what your pains are. So Prabir, I still see you there. So I've got one last question for you. I mean, Vijay's research says that only 3.5% of organizations are looking at a CDO role. But in your when you are talking to your ecosystem and you see how people are managing digital transformation, what's your take on the CIO role? Is it dead, or or is
No,
it
the
nuanced?
CDO role is not dead. I mean, it just I have written 3 versions of CDO profiles in the last 1 year also. So it's not dead, but I see a lot of vanguard action by CIOs who are not wanting the CDO, so they are trying to step up and try and combine the CIO and the CDO role. To me personally, it is very individual specific. I think the CDO role is a more a strategic role, right? The ability to envision business context, markets, the ability to reconfigure processes that you've been talking about, Jagdish, and then to pull in the entire IT infrastructure to digitally enable it. So it's a more complete job. The challenge is CIOs should not, if they are so stuck with the day-to-day job of keeping the lights on, they will not be able to do a fair job of the CDO agenda. But if someone has a good team and can step up and actually become more strategic, looking at the adjuncts, looking at the agenda with a wide angle lens, the CDO role is still a very distinct role. But I see a lot of CIOs actually getting stepped up into managing both.
Oh, so the role is not dead as depicted by Vijay. Okay,
But
hey, thanks, Prabir.
it comes up, but finally, does it actually see the light at the end of the day? We don't know, because there's a lot of discussion and activity. And the point that I think I heard in the conversation, CEOs also like to play safe. So the CIO might feel upset, or do I want to bite the bullet? So at the end of the day, these political conveniences prevent a very clear strategic breakthrough. But the agenda keeps bubbling now and then.
No, absolutely, absolutely, Vijay. Sorry, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, guys, we are at the end of the hour. Bye, Prabir. While we wrap up,
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I have a hard stop. I need to get out.
I can understand.
Take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much. I learned a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Prabir. Thank you so much for
Bye
joining us.
bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe next few minutes to wrap up. We always knew we are going to run out of time, and my apologies to all my audience. We couldn't really pick up questions except to Vinod, so I'm sure everyone is jealous of you, Vinod. But maybe we'll figure out. I'll probably request my panelists to come again for a follow-up session to answer all the questions. We have tons of them lined up here. If you guys are okay, or whoever can make it. Before I say bye, I would like to recap our objective. It was to provide our audience with diverse, richer, and uncanny viewpoints to assess your own organization's leaders and initiatives. I hope we all were successful in doing that. We were able to give you the picture, the perspectives, and the ideas behind those numbers that you saw on Vijay's presentation. Before we end this century of ClariTea Chat celebration, thank you all our audience for attending and engaging. Thank you all of you who are watching the recorded version. A lot of you do, we know. So please enjoy your family time. We'll be back next Saturday, yes, in our fortnightly session on 23rd September 2023. But before I leave again, thank you, Vijay Sethi sir, Vijay Ramachandran, Arun Gupta, Rajiv Jorapur, and Prabir just left for your support when we were starting out. You're one of my first guests, and your support now that we are like centurion, okay, in joining us on this important milestone. And thank you, everyone. Thanks. It's a great moment for us, and what better way to celebrate it with our guests and with such a nice audience engagement. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you,
Take
Jagdish.
care.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.